Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be diving into a really heavy topic, the 2009 Binghamton shooting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We've got a Wikipedia article and some excerpts from a longer document to help us understand this tragedy.
Okay.
So what I'm hoping we can uncover together is not just what happened, but what led up to it and what it means for us today.
Yeah, that's a great way to approach this. These kinds of events are never simple.
Right.
There's so many layers, and our mission today is to kind of peel those layers back, right? To try to make sense of something that on the surface seems senseless.
Exactly. And that's what I find so fascinating about this case, the contrast between the place where it happened and the horror of what unfolded.
Right.
We're talking about the American Civic Association in Binghamton, New York.
Okay.
This wasn't just some random building. This was a place that was supposed to represent hope and opportunity.
Right. It served the immigrant community, a claim where people could learn English, prepare for citizenship tests, and connect with others, a place that should have felt safe. And that makes the events of April 3rd, 2009 even more jarring.
Totally. It was a Friday morning, and everything seemed normal until Jiverly Wong, the perpetrator, shows up.
Uh-huh.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. He doesn't just storm the place.
Right.
He drives up in his car, uses it to block the back door,
Oh.
goes around to the front, puts on a bulletproof vest, and then enters. It's chilling.
There's a level of premeditation there that makes you wonder what was going through his mind in those moments leading up to the attack.
Right.
What was his breaking point?
We'll get into Wong's background and possible motives in a bit. But first, I want to talk about someone who showed incredible bravery that day, Shirley DeLucia, one of the receptionists.
Oh, okay.
She's shot in the stomach. But you know she does. She pretends to be dead, hides, and calls 911.
Well, and she stays on the line for almost 40 minutes, giving the police crucial information the whole time.
Talk about a hero. Her quick thinking and courage undoubtedly saved lives that day.
Right.
It makes you wonder how people can act so selflessly in the face of such terror.
Right. And while she's doing that, Wong enters an ESL classroom.
Oh my goodness.
And for those listening who might not know, that stands for English as a second language.
Right.
And he just starts firing. He kills 13 people in that room, including the teacher.
Oh,
Then he takes dozens of students hostage.
Can you imagine the sheer panic in that room, the confusion, the fear?
Oh, yeah.
This is where the situation escalates from a mass shooting into a full-blown hostage crisis.
And the police response is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
When Wong hears the sirens approaching, he takes his own life. In the end, he'd fired nearly 100 rounds from 2 handguns. It's devastating.
It really is. And to understand this tragedy, we need to understand the man behind it. So who was Jiverly Wong?
He was a Vietnamese immigrant, born Linh Phat Vuong.
He'd become a naturalized American citizen, but his life seemed to be a series of setbacks. There's a detail from his past that I think is particularly telling. He had a conviction for forgery in California.
That's interesting. Forgery, in a way, is about trying to create a false reality, to present yourself as something you're not.
Right.
Do you think that connects at all to his later actions, this desire to perhaps rewrite his narrative in a tragically violent way?
That's a really insightful point. And it gets even more complex when you factor in his job loss.
Okay.
He'd been laid off from a vacuum cleaner plant and was struggling to find new work. It's reported that he felt inadequate, especially because of his limited English skills.
You know, for many immigrants, learning the language is key to unlocking opportunities, to feeling integrated into society.
Right.
If he was struggling with English, it's not hard to imagine how that could lead to frustration and resentment.
Exactly. And that sense of alienation may have been compounded by his experiences as a Vietnamese refugee.
Right.
Think about it. He likely fled a war-torn country, seeking a better life in America,
Right.
only to find himself struggling, facing economic hardship, and feeling like an outsider.
There's a real tragedy there, isn't there? This disconnect between the American dream he may have envisioned and the reality he was facing.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that we're talking about the context of 2009, the peak of the Great Recession.
Oh, yeah.
Unemployment was soaring. And for someone already feeling marginalized, that economic anxiety could have pushed him over the edge.
It's a reminder that these events don't happen in a vacuum. Individual struggles often intersect with larger societal forces, creating a perfect storm of despair and anger.
And then there's this chilling detail.
Yeah.
Before the shooting, Wong mailed a letter to a local TV station.
Wow.
It's filled with accusations of police harassment and persecution. It's a disturbing glimpse into his state of mind.
It makes you wonder if he saw himself as a victim, as someone being targeted and wronged by society, and that perhaps in his mind this act of violence was a way to strike back, to regain some sense of control.
But it wasn't just anger and resentment in that letter. There were also photos of him holding guns and smiling.
That's where the psychological complexity deepens. What does that smile mean? Is it defiance, a twisted sense of satisfaction, or is it something else entirely? It's a question that forensic psychologists grapple with all the time, trying to decipher the motives behind such extreme acts. It's a stark reminder that we may never fully grasp the depths of another person's mind, especially when it comes to acts of violence like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so challenging. Trying to piece together a puzzle where some pieces might be missing forever, but we owe it to the victims to try, right?
Yeah.
To understand what happened and why.
We do. And speaking of the victims, their stories are at the heart of this tragedy. It's easy to get caught up in the details of the shooting, the investigation, the search for motives, but we have to remember the human cost. Right.
These were real people with families, dreams, aspirations.
Like Parveen Ali, a 26-year-old immigrant from Pakistan. She was working towards a better life for herself and her family.
And Almir Olimpio Alves, a 43-year-old visiting scholar from Brazil. He was contributing his knowledge and expertise to our country.
Laila Khalil, a 53-year-old Iraqi mother of 3. She was building a new home for her children, seeking safety and opportunity.
Roberta King, a 72-year-old substitute ESL teacher. She dedicated her life to helping others learn and grow.
And Hongshu Amy Mao Marsland, a 35-year-old nail technician who immigrated from China. She was pursuing her American dream, working hard to build a future for herself.
Each of these individuals, along with the others who were killed or injured, represent the diversity and the promise of the American Civic Association.
Right.
They came from different backgrounds, spoke different languages, but they were united by this common goal to create a better life for themselves and their families.
And their lives were tragically cut short in a place that was meant to nurture those dreams. It's heartbreaking, and it underscores the need for us to be more aware, more compassionate, more proactive in supporting vulnerable communities.
There were 4 other people wounded that day. One of them was Shirley DeLucia, the heroic receptionist who stayed on the phone with 911.
Right.
She not only survived the shooting, she played a crucial role in helping the police respond.
It's incredible. Her story really embodies both the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of even the smallest acts of courage.
Then there's Long Nguyen, a Vietnamese immigrant whose wife, Lan Ho, was tragically killed. He tried to shield her with his body but was shot several times himself. It's a powerful testament to love and sacrifice in the face of unimaginable horror.
It's a story that stays with you, isn't it? A stark reminder that amidst the darkness there are these glimmers of humanity, of love, of selflessness.
Absolutely. And in the aftermath of the shooting, we saw that same spirit of humanity, but on a larger scale. There was an outpouring of grief and support from the community, the nation, and the world.
People were shocked, horrified, and deeply saddened. This wasn't just a local tragedy, it resonated with people everywhere. Perhaps it was because the victims were immigrants seeking a better life that the story touched so many hearts.
Yeah. President Obama offered his condolences. Governor Patterson ordered flags to be flown at half-staff. Even Wong's parents, grappling with their own grief and guilt, issued a public apology to the victims' families.
It's a reminder that these events have these ripple effects.
Yeah.
They impact families, communities, and even those connected to the perpetrator in ways we can't always fathom.
And while we can never fully erase the pain and loss, it's important to acknowledge the efforts to rebuild and heal. The American Civic Association has since reopened, demonstrating a commitment to continuing its mission of serving the immigrant community.
It's a testament to the power of resilience, of choosing hope over despair. They chose to honor the memory of the victims by continuing the work that brought them together in the first place.
This deep dive has been incredibly heavy, as we knew it would be, but I think it's also been incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
We've explored the facts, the context, the human stories behind this tragedy, and I think that's crucial because it moves us beyond the headlines and into this deeper understanding of what happened and why it matters.
I agree. And while there are no easy answers, no quick fixes, this deep dive hopefully prompts us to ask some tough questions about ourselves, our communities, and our society as a whole.
Right.
What can we do to prevent these tragedies from happening again? How can we create a world where everyone feels safe, valued, and connected?
You know, as we're talking about this, I keep coming back to the idea of connection. The American Civic Association was a place where people found connection.
Yeah.
But Jervally Wong, in that letter he sent, He talked about feeling so isolated, so persecuted.
Yeah, that's a powerful observation. It really raises the question, how can we as individuals and as a society foster genuine connection? How can we bridge the divides that can lead to isolation and resentment and ultimately violence?
Exactly. And I think it starts with recognizing that everyone has a story.
Right.
Everyone is carrying burdens, that we might not see. What if instead of jumping to judgment or dismissing someone who seems different, we took the time to listen, to try and understand their perspective?
That's such a critical point. Empathy is the foundation of connection.
Right.
It's about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, trying to see the world through their eyes, even if we don't fully agree with them.
I remember reading a quote that said, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always."
Hmm.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own lives, our own struggles, that we forget that everyone around us is going through something too.
Absolutely. And sometimes the simplest act of kindness, a smile, a listening ear, can make a world of difference. It can remind someone that they're not alone, that they matter.
Thinking about Wong's letter and the anger he expressed towards the police, it makes me wonder, what role does mental health play in these situations?
Right.
Could there have been warning signs,
Mm.
opportunities for intervention?
That's a complex question. Mental health is often a factor in these tragedies, but it's rarely a simple cause and effect relationship. There are often multiple contributing factors. Societal pressures, personal traumas, economic hardships. It's like this tangled web.
Right, and it highlights the need for better mental health resources,
Hmm.
especially for immigrant communities who might face additional barriers like language differences or stigma.
It's about creating a culture where seeking help is seen as a sign of strength, not weakness, where people feel comfortable reaching out when they're struggling.
And I think it goes beyond just like formal mental health services. It's about building supportive communities,
Hmm.
where people feel connected, where they have someone to turn to when things get tough.
I couldn't agree more. It's about fostering a sense of belonging, of shared humanity, creating spaces where differences are respected and celebrated, not feared or demonized.
As we wrap up this deep dive, one thing that keeps coming back to me is the question of gun control. Our sources didn't delve into that specifically, but it's a conversation we can't avoid in the aftermath of these tragedies.
It's a sensitive issue with, strong opinions on both sides.
Right.
But at its core, it's about finding a balance between individual rights and the collective responsibility to protect our communities.
Right. And I think it's a conversation we need to have with empathy, with a willingness to listen to different perspectives, and with this shared goal of finding solutions that make our community safer.
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond the rhetoric and focusing on data, research, and evidence-based policies.
I want to leave our listeners with this thought. The American Civic Association reopened. They rebuilt. They chose hope.
Mm.
And that, to me, is a powerful message. Even in the face of unimaginable loss, even in the darkest of times, there's always this possibility for healing, for growth, for a brighter future.
It's a reminder that we're not powerless. We can choose compassion over fear. We can choose connection over isolation. We can choose to build a world where tragedies like the Binghamton shooting become unthinkable, not just a memory.
Well, thank you for joining us on this difficult but important deep dive. We hope this conversation sparks further reflection and action.
Yeah.
Remember, each of us has the power to make a difference, to create a world where everyone feels safe, valued, and connected.